Just be yourself is a prominent message we hear in Western culture, but is much easier said than done, especially if there's a part of yourself that you don't feel secure sharing all the time. People compensate for this insecurity in a myriad of ways, by shielding their identity, disguising their identity, putting on an accent they don't actually have. But one of the most harmful methods of identity compensation is stealing. And when I say harmful, I don't mean just for the victim of the crime. In this video, I'm gonna make a case study of a particular individual to show why the damage might be just as considerable to the person stealing, especially when it comes to plagiarism. When I'm not treating patients, I like watching basketball. And if you're anything like me, sometimes you get tired of hearing the same people talk about it.
Take me out, it's my turn! You told me it was my turn!
So you go onto YouTube to look for more variety. This is where the story of Pacific Hoops begins, a basketball channel run by a guy named Nico, who just likes to give his opinion on basketball. Right?
Hey guys, welcome to Pacific Hoops. I also don't mind making hot takes or new content, so just let me know. And to tell you the truth, there is truth in that.
He doesn't have the best command of grammar and syntax, and while that might not be for some people, it's honestly kind of charming in its own way when he embraces it. It's a breath of fresh air from some of the pseudo-scientific debate culture of basketball. But it didn't take long before I realized something sounded off. In one moment, he sounds like a break from basketball journalism, and in the next, it sounds like he got a degree in it.
The reigning NBA Finals MVP still got the upper hand and made sure he can still control his faith. The 21-year-old is flourishing under the tutelage of his mentor, but you guys know the situation we're in now, so yeah. But also bring a championship to the state of Cleveland for the first time, Damian Lillard grew up yearning that one day he'll be one of the next great point guards to come out of the basketball mecca known for producing floor general legends. It was the Oakland Soldiers who annually fielded calls from the top collegiate countries in the country.
For those of you thinking that using faith instead of fate is just his Filipino accent and I'm just being a little racist, I promise I have nothing against the Philippines. I think they're one of the top countries in the country. But as you'll soon see, it's not his accent that's cause for my medical concern.
And made sure he can still control his faith. Melo could never escape this fate.
It's the abrupt contrast in writing styles that told me I might have to diagnose Nico with plagiaristic personality disorder. But I couldn't come to this conclusion until I had absolute proof. So I began my research. I began jotting down some of the more suspect things he was saying, typing them up and sending them to the FBI. Sure enough, he plagiarizes his videos from online articles, word for word, paragraphs after paragraphs.
But even in this matter, the reigning NBA Finals MVP still got the upper hand and made sure he can still control his faith.
Video after video.
Game 2 of the Western Conference Finals, and the Denver Nuggets are down 1-0 to the top-seeded Lakers. Playing their second game at Staples, LA has already built up a 14-point lead early in the second quarter. Coach George Karl calls a timeout as things are starting to unravel in a hurry for the Nuggets. But then, coming off the break, Carmelo Anthony catches fire. It starts off with one of his signature pull-up jumpers from 18 feet. The next possession, he takes and makes another one, and then another one. All of a sudden, Melo scores 14 straight points for the Nuggets, single-handedly keeping his team in the game as they close the half, trimming the lead to just 1. Anthony ended the game with 34 points, his 5th straight playoff game with at least 30 at that point. But more importantly, this Nuggets evened the series at 1-1, stealing home court advantage away from the heavily favored Los Angeles Lakers. It was a brief moment of vindication for Melo, who at 24 years old was then branded as a regular season scorer who hadn't achieved any playoff success. But try as he might to erase that label, Melo could never escape this fate.
After video after video.
The rise of Victor Oladipo became one of basketball's better stories in 2013. It's just too bad most of us weren't following it from the beginning. Oladipo went to DeMatha Cat, number 41 at his position, and number 144 national. Born and raised in Oakland, California, Damian Lillard grew up yearning one day he'll be one of the next great point guards to come out of the basketball mecca known for producing floor general legends like Gary Payton and Jason Kidd. But while Lillard was a standout for both Oakland High School and AAU Oakland Rebels, it was the Oakland Soldiers who annually fielded calls from top collegiate countries in the country. Don't forget to drop a like if you guys love stories just like this.
These are indeed some fire stories, But I'm not gonna drop a like because I don't want to encourage behavior that Nico himself knows not to do. If you look in the description of his videos, he'll credit the owners of the clips, SoundCloud artists, the Constitution. He'll even credit the Philippines for birthing him. So he knows about giving credit where it's due. But Nico doesn't give any credit to the authors because he doesn't want you to know that they aren't actually his
hot takes.
It's like he reads the headline of the article and then just goes, yeah, that's my hot take now. R.I.P. R.P. Salau. But the tragedy doesn't end there for writers like Mr. Salau, because not only is Nico taking credit for their content, he's taking credit for their content. He's got ads and now sponsorships paying him every penny of other people's content. Nico doesn't have to put in any of the hard work it takes to make those articles, but he takes all the praise and paychecks as if he did. With his first sponsorship under his belt, Nico began to realize that things were getting real. As his subscribers started to grow, he knew that stealing entire paragraphs word for word was a risky idea. Nobody's caught him yet, but to keep the feds off his back, he knew something had to change.
Feel free to comment as well if you have any topic suggestions, since I want to challenge myself in the type of content that I do in this channel.
After he said this, I wondered if his outlaw days were over. After typing phrase after phrase of his new video into search platforms, it looked like Pacific Hoops had finally quit his sinful ways. Or did he?
Consider his overall skill set and the value he gives to this Thunder team.
Turns out, he didn't stop plagiarizing, he just got better at disguising it. He switches out specific words to cover his tracks, intentionally botching the phrasing as well to make it harder to find his stealing through search platforms.
A mini comeback season with the Mavericks in 2012 led to a 3-year deal with the Milwaukee Bucks, but just like before, he started losing time because he was out of shape. The 21-year-old is flourishing under the tutelage of his mentor and backcourt partner in Chris Paul. He's playing so well this year that a lot of people are already calling that he's gonna be an all-star by next season. Consider the growth in SGA's game in a single season. He's almost doubled his scoring output and has doubled his rebounding effort as well. Just consider he's also playing with one of the best point guards in the league today, which I thought was going to limit his production, but instead has made him even better.
In my years of practice, this is one of the worst cases of PPD I've ever seen. And if he finds out about thesaurus.com, it's terminal. But it's not too late yet, because there's 2 treatments to end this story with justice. One is by doing what Nico does best, by switching out Pacific words, but still keeping it factual. My preferred prescription might be a harder pill to swallow, but the effects make it worth the struggle. Let me explain. Plagiarism is a sin many have come to recognize by the enforced punishments of their educational background. But what this fails to address is why we feel the desire to do it in the first place. On the surface, we can recognize plagiarism as a small act of deceit as a convenience to achieving a goal. But at the beginning of this video, I talked about identity, and more specifically, when we feel it is inadequate to achieve that goal as ourselves. In this sense, our motivation to steal isn't necessarily about taking from someone else, but perhaps about giving something to ourselves. Security, a product of believing that what we don't have can be replaced by what someone else does have. The ends justify the means, we tell ourselves, the benefits worth the small compromise of what some educator once labeled integrity. But if this does springboard your image or your career, it will catch up with you, not only from how the public views you, but from how you view you. If you fill your perceived inadequacies with someone else's success, you set a precedent that doesn't fix the inadequacy, but instead masks it, confirming it in your self-image as something to cover instead of something to address. That's why the particular weakness of the plagiarist isn't necessarily the guilt, but the sloth that validates itself every time it garners desired results. Positive feedback, views, money, the dopamine rush, all telling you you did it. And the magic trick is, you didn't even have to. This is why seeing a plagiarist exposed shows us what seems to be a person getting the benefits of both worlds without the sacrifices of either. They reap the comfort of the sloth life, but not the sacrifice of the financial burden. They reap the benefit of the credit, attention, and money, but not the sacrifice of hard work and novel creation. But to that point, I'd argue there's a bigger sacrifice being made with this magic trick to life. No amount of money will ever fill the hole in your existence that didn't produce unique value that you otherwise could have produced. No amount of attention will ever fulfill the identity that you deemed inadequate. No image, achievement, or lifestyle will ever compensate for the loss of life that you chose to live as someone else. In this sense, plagiarism is a crime whose punishment is inherent, the existential damage of which might be worth considering for even the least empathetic of people, if not for the sake of the victim, for the sake of the criminal. While replacing your identity might make you look the way you want for the time being, you may find that embracing your identity will make you feel the way you want, even if that comes with the frightening sacrifice of being judged for who you are. Maybe the real Nico underneath Pacific hoops doesn't have all the grammatically cutting, perfect analysis that we're accustomed to with basketball commentary, but perhaps there's something even more charming underneath, something that only he can offer. And this is why my prescription to the plagiarist is to express yourself as yourself, even if that means that what you have to express is something that you feel like isn't enough. No matter what that looks like, it's someone far more valuable to this world than who you think you need to be.